This is episode 1264, recorded May 20th, 2025.
What's up, Mark?
Hey, Scotty,
How's it going, brother?
Sunshine.
Yes, sir.
Got
How we
Scotty.
doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Grateful and happy, man. Living the dream.
That's great. Great.
One moment at a time.
Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'm recording
I'm
it,
excited to
so
be on
take.
Housatonic Life.
I know it's been your life's dream. Everything
Yeah.
has led you to this particular moment in time. First, I know. I mean, honestly, I know you don't watch my show a whole lot, and that's cool. Matter of fact, we just met each other a couple weeks ago. It was actually at a local, I think it was at a county-wide business development council meeting, and a mutual friend of ours, Cheryl Jaware, run. I think it was like best individual accomplishment, or I forget what the title was. It was something like that regarding the Massachusetts license plates.
Definitely. She was a force to be honored in the city of Marlborough for all the work that she's done this year. It's just incredible.
She worked a long time at that. I don't know how long you've known Cheryl. We've known her, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. It's hard to really put a date on it anymore. I mean, our son was friends with Sean, their son Sean, and we know that for most of those years, this has been part of her vision, getting those license plates done.
In fact, that's how I met Cheryl, was through the license plates and her advocacy for overdose prevention centers. In January of 2024, we met at the State House, and she was given testimony to about the overdose prevention center bill. And members from Team Sharing, there were four other people who all poured their hearts out that day, and shared about their pain to get in touch with their purpose of doing everything the state of Massachusetts can. So to have overdose prevention centers, so nobody will have to die overdose for addiction. It just so Cheryl has been a longtime advocate and a supporter of MOAR, Massachusetts Organization Addiction Recovery. We have a great partnership, and I could never do enough for Team Sharing. Love the mission, love the people.
I agree. We did what we could to help sponsor them this year on their on the 5K road race, and we'll try to keep doing that annually as they have that event. Just a quick background, actually for you, because you may share this with some people who are unfamiliar with my program. My name is Mark Kulak. I live up in the central Massachusetts area, Southborough actually, and I worked for 20 plus years in the tech industry as a software engineer, competitive intelligence analyst, product marketing, companies like EMC and Dell. And it was a couple of family health challenges. One was chronic Lyme, but the other one was our son's, or my stepson's, he was an adult by the time when he passed, addiction with opioids. And both of these issues were receiving almost no visibility back 10 years ago. And my wife and I, who are relatively apolitical, at least definitely were at that time, were just like, why can't this get a little bit more visibility? And one thing led to the next. And before I knew it, I started doing some online research and advocacy. And then I said, what the heck? I'm just going to throw everything in, because I saw, a lot of things connected to this particular issue. But it was really that evangelism that made me want to even do this. So it's a core issue of mine, even though I get into a lot of historical topics. And my audience is worldwide, probably about 60% U.S., though. And again, it's relatively, and I'm proud of this, apolitical. That just doesn't really go anywhere, and anywhere good. I have some people in my audience who have been and still struggle with time to time with addiction. And I think they appreciate the fact that I can communicate with them, connect with them. And I'm always pushing for removing the stigmatization of it. And there's also a lot of people who still, even though I talk about the extent of the problem, even just statistically, removing the humanity from it, I still struggle just to get people aware of just how significant it is and remains, not just in the deaths so far, but still on society. So, with that in mind, I just say that because it might help you provide some color on some of the questions that I have here. And again, thank you again for clearing your time. First,
And Mark, before we
yeah,
begin, like if there's anything I can do to be of support to anyone, because I'm a person in long-term addiction recovery, mental health recovery, and trauma recovery. I also I give my number out to freely to anybody. Now we're going to go worldwide with this. Okay, I'm on WhatsApp, so if
really,
yeah, so if people want to connect with me, I'll just share it. 508-971-5421. Okay, so you can text me, you can call me, whether in the in the U.S. you can just pick up that cell phone and call. Or if you're I don't know where the furthest person is around the world. What countries have you heard from, Mark? Like
every country, every continent except for Antarctica, of course. But I've connected with people in South America, Asia, Africa, mostly South Africa.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so hit me up on WhatsApp, and you give me a call on WhatsApp. We can do a little video conferencing. Honestly, Mark, I feel like I've been given this gift of recovery, and I can never do enough to pay it forward what it's given to me. So
Yeah, I mean, not to share the details, but I know that you have your family growing right now, and that's something that I've always encouraged people. You don't wait till it's ready. It's time. And for you, I'm so proud to hear that. That's a wonderful thing.
the
And
time is now, right? As they say, the time is now.
the time is now. Yeah. There may not be a tomorrow.
Right.
So
So feel free to ask me any question about anything, and if I don't have a good answer, I'll tell you. But hopefully, I have some answers to your good questions.
So, at what point in your life did you become aware of of the fact that people struggle with addiction? And it could have been your own, it could have been a family member. Because there's not many people who, when you go to grade school, you learn you could be a police officer, you can work in a factory, you could be a doctor, or you can work in recovery. It's most people aren't even aware that such a field exists. Quickly, what was your journey that led you here?
Well, that's a tough question. Like honestly, I didn't. I guess the answer to your question, like I don't know when I became aware of addiction, but it's funny how what we grew up with as normal, right? Things are normalized all the time. Like I thought it was normal for my grandmother, Grandma Murphy, would come in. She'd babysit me. My parents would, whether they're going out to a night out, maybe going to a dance or dinner with some friends. She was going to babysit me. She'd come in with her cigarette. Scott, make me a Manhattan. I'm 4 years old. I knew how to make a Manhattan, and I saw family members drinking. Also, it was also normal back. I'm a product of the '70s. It was normal.
Same.
My dad and his buddies be watching the football game. Hey, Scott, go get me a beer. I'd go into the kitchen. I'd grab a beer from my dad. I'd open it and I'd take a sip. I thought that was normal. Nowadays, like I do not have alcohol in my house. I do not socialize around alcohol. I would never have my kid get me be part of this because we're really into prevention in our family. So I don't know when I first began to see it as addiction, because we talk about substance use disorder. And it's not so much about the quantity of the alcohol, or I like to call it drugs, because alcohol is a drug.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the quantity of the drug consumed, but it's about the impact that it has on an individual, on families, on society. So I don't know when I became aware of the prevalence of addiction in society. I just know for myself, I had that progression of use. I had my first age of use. I was the summer of fourth grade. I was 9 years old. I was playing on an all-star baseball team. I was the pitcher. The catcher invited me over to his house, and his dad had a bar, and So we started drinking at 9 years old. It's kind of early onset. And then I remember with that same friend going to ask his family member of his when we were like that later that same summer if he'd go buy us a 6-pack. I mean, and the guy did it. Like, who buys? Maybe it was a following summer, like 10-year-old kids. Who's buying a 10-year-old kid a 6-pack? So, and then I know for myself, it just progressed. And when I got to high school, I started using alcohol and other drugs, and it just progressed. And I realized that when I went away to college, I think maybe that's when I really became aware of addiction, because I would see people using drugs. We had a buddy of ours who drank too much and would like get out of hand sometimes. I had a couple friends like that, but I didn't see it as addiction. And it wasn't really until I got to college in the fall of 1988, and I saw some people like my roommate, this kid, he wouldn't go to class. He drank every day. And I'm trying to like, hey man, you got to go to class. You're going to, and he wouldn't go. And I saw other people using in excess. And I do remember a buddy of mine from high school. We played basketball together in high school. We, played on a very strong team. He transferred into my college as a sophomore, and I was a freshman. And I was shocked to learn that he smoked marijuana every day. And at that point, I guess I was 17 years old at that point, and I didn't know that people smoked marijuana every day. It just blew my mind. Interesting enough, Mark, by the end of freshman year, guess what I was doing every day?
Marijuana?
Marijuana every day. So I think maybe that's the answer to your question. Is when I was 17 years old, I really became aware of addiction. And
you wanted it every day. You felt like something was off. You were unproductive.
Well, looking for me, Mark, I had to deal with an identity shift. I was always an athlete. Played Little League baseball, basketball, and we played sports in the community, like whether it be football, pickup football, hockey, and on all-star teams. And just really for my town, I was one of the better athletes. And then I went to high school, played on a basketball team that won the Eastern Mass Championship. And a soccer team that won championships. And that was my identity. I was an athlete, and I was, peer respect. I was like I remember getting some award, one of the top soccer players in the greater New Bedford area, which was an accomplishment that I was amazed when I got voted that. I didn't know, but then when I went to college, I was no longer an athlete. And what I really had was a crisis of confidence. And when I got up there, I realized I could play soccer with these guys. I could have played on that, maybe I could have made the basketball team, and I was better at soccer than basketball. But, and so I realized I began coping with these feelings of feeling less than, feeling not being a part of. My solution was to use alcohol and other drugs to connect with other people. And because we like to say the opposite of addiction is connection. And looking back on it, that's what I was really trying to do, was to connect with other people, to deal with the fear I had about not fitting in, dealing with the lack of self-confidence, of losing this identity from being like, being a person of status to just not feeling really good about myself.
That's such an important a phrase there. Connection is the opposite of addiction. Where, I think that there's many different tenets to what's happening in the world today. But we can barely fix the United States, so I tend to stay U.S. focused on this because I don't know exactly the details of this in other countries, respectfully. But social media has created a lot of isolation. A lot of people see the world through their screen right now as opposed to connecting. And I think we're all a little bit guilty about that. But it's not the whole picture, but that is definitely, do you think that has played in with people feeling, even though they are connected online, feeling disconnected? Because this is not, you and I know each other offline, so it's helpful a little bit anyways. We still only met a couple of weeks ago, but this isn't really a natural relationship. We can't see each other like physically, we can't be measuring each other up. So there's still a bit of a distance. And for people who have all of their friends online, you're inherently disconnected. And maybe to feel more connected, you're more vulnerable to substance use. I didn't know if you thought that was an angle or maybe not.
I think it depends. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question. Because I do know, I'm a trauma person, trauma recovery, and it feels odd to me. Like if you're talking about social media, right? That's what we're talking about.
Well, social media, people, or just people are so connected to their phones. They are more disconnected physically, anyways, from people than they ever have before. People.
Well, I was going with the social media aspect. Like back in, I think 2010, I was part of an organization, and we had a SAMHSA grant, and for recovery.
A SAMHSA, did I hear that right?
Yeah, the substance abuse mental health service administration, federally funded program. They have a great definition of recovery. Since I mentioned SAMHSA, an individual's process of change in health and wellness, living a self-directed life, and striving to reach one's full potential. And it's a great definition of recovery because it's not talking about how much a person uses. It's not talking about anything but a process of change, of health and wellness, living a self-directed life and striving to reach one's full potential. And like they also have like 8 dimensions of wellness. And they have 4 pillars of support. It's around 4 domains like community, purpose, health, and home. And like when all those things are in line, and I know for me, that's when I'm really well. But to bring it back to that question,
but self-directed, I'm
all right.
Sorry,
go
just
on,
interrupt, but
I
love that because I think people who've never had an addiction, and addiction could be, of course, alcohol, drugs, gambling. They all create the same pathways. I mean, once you repeat something to a point where it doesn't make any sense anymore, you're no longer addicted. Something is going off the rails. But without being broken by addiction, I think most people are inherently self-directed, although they're just not conscious of it.
Yeah.
But once you become addicted, you're directed by something else. That is nonsensical with no actual reward other than you can do more of it, maybe. So I love the fact that that's in the title because once you're in recovery, you have to become aware of remaining self-directed. So I love that.
And how can we have empowerment without having choice? So, and self-determination is a huge part of it. I know for me, as a person, like I shared about in trauma recovery, the first thing that goes for me is I don't see the world as a safe place. My ability to trust is gone. It affects how I connect with other people. It really, and it focuses my self-image. It really does a number on that. So the opposite of, healing happens in relationship, just like trauma happens in relationship, healing happens. So then I can make connection, have healing relationships that, that inspire hope, that support empowerment and gives voice. People can share what's important to them, and there are no surprises. Like people can can understand what's about to happen, and then people can make an informed choice if they want to participate in this. So that's what I love about this recovery thing and living a self-directed life, and to have that empowerment. So we can so I know for myself, I had to reclaim and heal and learn how to love myself instead of having all the shame, self-hatred, self-loathing. Now it's about self-love, self-discipline, and support. So I know we got a little bit off topic from the question, but around the social media, but it's like it's felt awkward in the past to be like on Facebook, to have people who I were close with in high school, Like, because I had had a lot of people who I thought were my friends, and then as a result, when I became unwell, they were no longer my friends. It doesn't feel right to me, to them being able to see all the stuff that I'm doing in my life. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't feel like a real relationship, and I think that's maybe what your question is getting at. Like you and I are building a authentic relationship. We know each other. You know, it's like I'm so excited that we met.
Yeah, me too.
And we're not that far from each other.
Oh, Cheryl says hi, by the way. My wife
away.
says hi. She loves you as well.
Give her my best. She's incredible. And I think that's at the heart of what your question was. We're having a relationship, and as a result of having this time together, it's not fake. It's authentic, you know. So I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. But I think there's I mean, you and I, having grown up, children of the 70s, things have changed a lot. I didn't have my first computer till I was 18 or 20, and I was going into the field of computer sciences. So, this I didn't learn on a screen. I had a physical typewriter. I managed papers, so
I hated that sucker.
And I think it's good. I feel in a way blessed. I didn't have a computer or a tablet or phone or anything else. You can always learn it after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was better for us. But for kids who are isolated for whatever reason, they spend too much time in their room, they're not going out enough. I don't know. I think there can be a sense of loneliness. Or maybe it's because of the people around them. Hey, mom, and mom's like this, and dad is like this, and you might have seen some animation about that, about how society people, instead of just walking up to someone saying hi, you.
Yeah. Well, you've seen people and kids in the same room together. They're all texting each other. It's like
you're texting each other. I know.
Just put down the phone and please talk.
You're watching your kids done the Christmas play like this. You're watching through. Comedians joke about this all the time. You're watching your children through a device. It's like watch someone else's recording. You got them in full HD right here. Let's see. So, I would love to. Let's see. Recovery. Let's see. So we got that. The start. So tell us a little bit about your organization, Recovery. So there's many. Just quick background. Yeah. There's people who specialize in, obviously, emergency care for people who are dealing urgently with an overdose. There are counselors to help people, how would you say, deal with the withdrawal symptoms. There are people who will deal with counseling for families. There's grief counseling. There's many people who are involved in this in different areas. Okay, so I think it would be helpful in tell people about your organization, what your role is, or what your organization's role is in this this I don't want to say pipeline, but in this complex space.
Great. I work for MOAR, Massachusetts organization for addiction recovery, founded in the early 90s, 1992, by Marianne Frey-Goulis, just a wonderful person, and she just retired as our executive director. And Leroy Kelly was also the co-founder. And our mission is to organize recovering individuals, families, and friends into a collective voice to educate the public about the value of recovery from alcohol and other addictions. And our vision statement, Mark, plays exactly into just what you're talking about with the opening around stigma and how that can be a barrier for people accessing support, for people talking about what's going on. Yeah. So get this. Our vision statement is, all right, people, you with me? MOAR envisions a society where addiction is seen as a significant public health issue, and that recovery is seen as valuable to all our communities. So people will feel comfortable. Like my catchphrase is recovery is real. I go around, my mom has made me t-shirts that says recovery is real on the front, on the back. I'm blessed to have a lot of family support, and support in the community and support to help me heal from the trauma. Because for a long time, Mark, you would not have found me going around with the Recovery Thrill shirt on. You would never hear me identify as a person in trauma recovery, mental health recovery, or addiction recovery. However, since I've had that peer support and I've been able to heal from the things that have happened to me, I'm comfortable going around wearing a Recovery is Real shirt. And I have people, whether I'm at my kids at the bus stop or in the supermarket, the gym, wherever I go, there's no place that I won't wear. I'm afraid to wear a Recovery is Real shirt on because I don't have that. I used to have that self stigma. Like it was so bad, Mark. I moved out of my town. I moved from the New Bedford area to Brockton because I didn't want anybody to know I felt so bad about myself. So
really, you
as a
didn't want
result of,
people to. Well, that would be the stigma.
yeah,
You're in
it was
recovery.
bad.
We can't even
Yeah,
trust you to do our
yeah,
lawn. Why should we live next to you? Yeah.
yeah. It was really bad. And so like having that healing, now I can go around, I can wear that shirt. I can be at the bus. I remember at the bus stop, this parent came up to me. He's like, "Hey, are you in recovery?" I'm like, yes, recovery is real. So it's like I am blessed to work for an organization. I am the Metro West Regional Coordinator for MOAR. So our organization, we do prevention work. You know, we work with people with treatment. Like we don't provide. We're not a treatment center, but like I was at a treatment center last Wednesday offering to do. We do trainings like recovery messaging. People want to learn how to share their story in a way that bust stigma, or I like to call it a way that bust discrimination. Because let's face it, stigma is a nice word for prejudice and discrimination. Because people, that's what's really going on. Is
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
the
I
prejudice and
100% agree.
discrimination, and it's not okay. It's not okay.
I don't use it
No,
to be politically correct.
yeah,
It feels like a I don't know a word that describes it better, but that's what it is. It's prejudicial. You're making
yeah,
a prejudgment. Absolutely.
yeah. And honestly, Mark, that stigma, that prejudice, and that discrimination in how people treated me based on having being diagnosed with a mental health condition, which looking back on it, it really was about addiction. Um, and it was really about trauma recovery. And I was coping with my trauma and through using substances. And so how people responded to me or abandoned me, then I felt like, wow, I had so much shame. I am a terrible person. I'm not worthy of people calling me back. You know what I'm saying? Like I had all that self hatred and how people would talk about people. It got to the point where I wanted to end my life. So, because I had so many bad days in a row, it was to the point where I didn't want to leave my home. I had to move back to my parents' house when I was 24 years old because I lost a job as a direct result of alcohol and other drug use, like alcohol and marijuana. And I just felt like my negative self-talk was, I'm such a loser. I have nothing to offer anybody. I'm and that stigma and I internalized all this stuff, and it got to the place where I thought it'd be a good idea if I would end my life. So luckily, I realized that if I do this, it's going to be a permanent solution to what could be a temporary problem. And I said, look, I'm just going to give it 10 years. And if my life doesn't get better in 10 years, because I knew I was still young, then I'm going to do it. Plus, I didn't want to do it to my family. And my dad had gotten me into we have suicide in our family. My Uncle Jack, he took his own life in the 70s. And my dad, as a result, became a volunteer for the Samaritans. So I'd like to put a plug in for the Samaritans. If they have volunteers, they train the volunteers well. And so I end up, because of my father's example, I went to become a Samaritan. And that experience saved my life, because when I was going to end my life, I had a plan that day when I remember the alcohol and the other drugs stopped working. And I was going to do it. And I had a pretty severe plan that was going to work. I was confident. But I was like, hey, I just spent last summer supporting people not to end their life. And besides, Ellie, the director of the Samaritans, Ellie Lee, she just told me, Scotty, God has a special plan for you. And I'd be like, baloney. But, Ellie proved to be right. So that stigma or that discrimination, that prejudice, and it can also not be in words, but by body language. How people look at people, and that's why we like to say the absence of negative messages is way more empowering than the presence of positive messages. Because think about it, Mark. If I say 9 positive things to you, right, and I say or I give you a look about something, I roll my eyes at something you say, what are you going to remember? You going to remember the 9 positive things, or are you going to remember that one negative message?
People tend to remember the negative. I mean, that's a rhetorical question, but yes.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why it's very important that we don't send any negative messages, and that's how we eliminate stigma. That's how we eliminate discrimination. That's how we eliminate prejudice, is by appreciating people and treating people how they want to be treated, and really appreciating people for who they are and not for what we want them to be. Because everybody, I learned at RAP, my primary pathway is wellness recovery action planning, and I learned, like, I was never told any of this going through the mental health system. Nobody ever told me that I was an expert on myself and that I couldn't get in touch with my inner wisdom to figure out, what is it that I want out of life. So it's important that we treat people, and we do this trauma-informed or trauma-sensitive, that we treat people with respect. We treat people as if they're an expert on themselves. And we make that connection to really have strong relationships, because that is a way, because to bring it full circle, we talked about the opposite of addiction is connection. And when we have those connections, then we can talk about what's really going on. We can talk about our fears. We can talk about our passions. We can talk about our strengths, our vulnerabilities, and we're stronger together.
You mentioned trauma, which is a word I don't use very often. Now, in your context, Scotty, are you referring to trauma in terms of someone having a trauma which would make them predisposed to seeking alcohol and drugs, or all of the trauma and damage which comes with becoming and going through the free fall of addiction, or both?
Yeah, both. I mean, because myself, I have experienced trauma as a child, as a juvenile, like every step along the way, as different ages.
Mm-hmm.
And so that stuff lives in my body. There's a book out there, The Body Keeps a Score, by Bessel van de Kamp. It's really does a lot of information about trauma. And
the body
and
keeps us. I'm sorry, the body keeps a score. By what was the author?
I have Bessel van de Kamp, and I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong.
I'm gonna look up. I'll put these links down below. I'm a big believer in trying to support whatever cause people have here.
For the first 12 and a half chapters, it's a lot of details on trauma, maybe the worst trauma stories I've ever heard. In fact, I listened to it on audio. But like when it gets to 12 and a half, it gets into trauma recovery.
Okay.
And just for the record, about, like, we're talking about trauma, it can be anything that impacts our view of the world, anything that impacts how we see ourselves, and anything that impacts how we connect with other people. So it can happen before, during, or even after use. Like, I am, just because I haven't had alcohol or another drug in almost 18 years,
That's impressive. Congratulations.
I can still, well, thank you so much. I can still have trauma responses, and things can happen in my life. And it's about just realizing that, hey, when we have stuff happen to us, they don't define who we are, but we can then, have, I guess, supports and skills and tools to cope with those things, so that we don't, or I'll put it myself, so I don't have to cope with it through picking up using some type of substance. I can talk about what's going on. I can find purpose in my pain. I can do some meditation or some grounding or some exercise, or try to get out of myself and try to be a support to another human being.
Now, given the fact that you've shared, you've had long stretches of your life where you've struggled with addiction.
Yes.
And for the record, I have too. Well, not a long stretch. It was, I had back surgery 18 years ago. I don't even remember right now. 15 years, it becomes vague. But there was several months where I was using some sort of hydrocodone, I think,
Yep.
and my back hurt a lot. But eventually you realize, the back doesn't hurt that much. And, I was taking it for other reasons. And boy, I was not happy after my doctor cut me off. And I still have a lingering memory of the satisfaction of getting the refill. Okay. And if it wasn't for the doctor cutting me off then, I may not be here right now. I don't know. I was lucky. I was lucky that he was a hard ass in that case. So do you think it is one of the challenges is it's hard to really describe what it's like to be on the other side of it unless you've been through it. And because we can't just live in a world exclusively of people who are in recovery. How have you effectively described what it's like to be in a lifelong recovery to someone who's hasn't or isn't in that state yet? And or what mistakes have you made in trying to help people understand that? Maybe I didn't phrase the question well enough, but
No, those are some really big questions, Mark. I will say this: what it's like. How about if we go with the question I really love? What's it like to be a person in successful long-term recovery?
However you can communicate, please share.
I absolutely love it. Just imagine being able to go any place, and finding support. Wherever I travel to. I just left Anchored in Recovery Center, Peer Recovery Support Center in Framingham. And to be able to walk in there, sit down with some people, like I didn't know this one guy, and within an hour later, I heard this guy's story, and I was able to share a little bit of my story and have that connection. So it's like it is fantastic, like to be able to connect with so many like-minded people, to be able to have just a lot of wisdom, to be able to learn from other people, and to be able to be a part of so many different communities. In recovery exists all over the world. I also I'm a multiple pathways person, so
what does that what does that mean for the unenlightened multiple pathway?
So like a pathway of recovery is anything that supports a person to be well, so for some people, Jesus, or religion, it can be any type of religion, and that's a particular pathway. It could be any type of religion. Could be a way of connecting community, connecting with a guide for living, or it could also be like through mutual aid support meetings, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. Yesterday, I went to another peer recovery support center because in Massachusetts, we have 39 peer recovery support centers that are funded by BSAS, Bureau of Substance Addiction Services, which is funded by DPH, Department of Public Health. And that's also one of my jobs at MOAR, is to work with, because as I mentioned earlier, we do prevention work, we do treatment, we work with treatment providers, and we also work in recovery and harm reduction. And so we have connections with people at peer recovery support centers. We provide opportunities for advocacy, for education about advocacy things, legislative bills like overdose prevention centers. But to get back to that question, is a pathway of recovery is anything that can support a person's wellness. So there are other pathways that, since we had this pandemic, one of the beautiful things that came out of it, it made different pathways of recovery accessible online. So before the pandemic, I had never attended a Wellbriety meeting, which is Native American recovery, which is, or they used to call it the Red Road of Recovery. And it's about, it's kind of like, it's a 12-step based recovery process, but it also has principles, and it seeks to really support, I identify with trauma recovery because the indigenous people had to, as they say, to forgive the unforgivable. They lost their land. They had a culture, their acculturation. They weren't allowed to practice certain rituals from their culture. So that's a beautiful pathway of recovery. I was able to access that. Also, smart recovery went on. I was able to access smart recoveries, which has like a 4-point program. It's like cognitive based therapy, to increase motivation, manage urges to use. Other pathways of recovery that I've used is Life Ring Secular Recovery, founded out of California in the mid '90s. Um, and so there's been so many different pathways, and it basically think of it this way, Mark. It's a path up a mountain. Like every day we got to climb Mount Recovery. Okay, so however you define it, like there could be maybe some people use the steps. They take the steps up the mountain, or maybe other people, are gonna meander a little way, and it's about climbing to the top of that mountain for those 86,400 seconds it takes to do 24 hours. And then when we get to the top of that mountain, we can all celebrate that we got there, whether we use Celebrate Recovery, or what else? Women for Sobriety, or moderation management, whatever it is, pathway or exercise. There are so many, meditation, there's so many different ways that a person can be well. And, that those are referred to as pathways of recovery.
Okay.
Long answer. Sorry.
No, look, if I'm talking, I'm not listening to you. People listen to me for thousands of hours, so at least a few people also have.
And I left out my primary pathway where I talked about Wellness Recovery Action Plan, and it's about hope, personal responsibility, education, support, and self-advocacy. And how I got into addiction recovery was when I became, I went to I was working as a peer specialist, which is a person in mental health recovery and or trauma recovery. And I was working for this Department of Mental Health funded PAC team, which is like an outreach team to the same care that a person would get in a hospital, we gave in the community. And I was working down in Fall River, New Bedford, and I went to this 10-day certified peer specialist training, and this was in 2006. And that was really, Mark, the first time I'd ever met people who were in recovery. Because you asked me before about when did I become aware of addiction. This was the first time I really began to develop relationships with anybody in addiction recovery. And at this training, we learned about this resource called RAP, and it seeks to make a wellness plan. And one of the parts of the plan is to identify stressors. Back then they called them triggers, and to develop a trigger action plan. And when I took a look at like what were my stressors to becoming unwell, every single time I got fired from a job, I had problems in the community, like I'm a person who's been arrested in 3 different states for stupid stuff. And it was always alcohol related stuff, And so I was like, all right, this is a pretty simple stressor action plan. If I don't pick up that first suck of drink, then I'm not going to get drunk. I'm not going to get charged with disorderly conduct. I'm not going to get charged with, other stuff, So that was the beginning of me taking a look at what I got to take in the beginning and ask myself, what was it I got to do to be well? And saying, wow, if I just eliminate using substances, what if because I also had a counselor who asked me in 1995, what am I going to replace alcohol and other drugs with? And any idea what my response was, Mark? What am I going to replace alcohol and other drugs with?
Well, what do people say? Exercise, they'll say God, they'll say family, they'll say, or they don't have an answer. They get scared. Well, but how did you answer it?
Yeah, I'm kind of at the latter. I said nothing, because I'm not giving them up. And it took me 11 years.
Oh, I get it.
11 years later, because then I was like, wow, when I'm making this rap plan, I'm like, I can replace alcohol and other drugs with personal growth, with wellness, trying to have a positive impact on the lives of other people, because I can't support someone in addiction recovery if I'm still using, you know, because I learned at that training also that I was coping. Also, I didn't know that I was in trauma recovery. I thought it was like bad stuff that happened to me. And at that training, I learned that I was in trauma recovery. And as a result, I could, you know, replace um, this stuff with, you know, doing things to heal from that and being able to have a positive impact on the lives of other people. So, and that was when I decided to go into addiction recovery and ask for help and get it.
Now, there's many recovery centers which are full-time residencies, and
Mm-hmm.
some are like Alcoholics Anonymous, which are
Yeah,
they'll have meetings,
yeah.
regular or ad hoc. Do you work with both? Is more suggests one type of
Okay.
or another?
Well, great. More, as I said, more supports multiple pathways of recovery.
Okay.
You know, whether it's abstinence based, which is AA is an abstinence based program. You
Hmm.
know, and and we also support harm reduction, which can be, you know, a person's got to decide, you know, anything that's going to reduce the impact of harm. And, you know, so we work with organizations that provide harm reduction, like that bill that we're talking about, the Overdose Prevention Center bill that we're working on getting passed in the House of Representatives, because last year it was passed in the Senate, but not supported in the House of Representatives. So if anybody wants to get involved with more in advocacy, please reach out to me. So we'll work with harm reduction organizations, provide trainings, give out more swag, you know, help people come to, we have a recovery day in Boston every year, usually toward the end of every September, because September is recovery month, you know. So we'll work with all these different organizations, not so much like individual mutual aid groups like AA, but you know, we have connections with people who are in mutual aid groups, but we're not, you know, because each group is self-supporting and autonomous. So, but we work with the places that have AA groups, you know, so we'll have relationships with churches, we'll have relationships with recovery centers, you know, gatekeepers of the community.
Thank you. I'd love for you to expand upon the bill with the state of Massachusetts that you just mentioned.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is that a safe use center?
Yes, it is. In fact, a little while ago, we went to, I think in February, took a trip down to Providence, Rhode Island, South Providence, where they have an overdose prevention center there. And there people can bring um, substances that they procured to the center and go into a room and use substances. And if they have an overdose, they were opened, I think, on January 19th, and they might have reversed something like 36 overdoses within 2 months, you know. And just so you know, they have in 100 different cities worldwide, um, in many different countries, I think 13 different countries, they have overdose prevention centers. And can you guess how many people have overdosed and died at an overdose prevention center, Mark?
I don't know the number, but I think it's extremely low.
It is the lowest you
It's
can imagine.
extremely low.
Zero.
In this alternative media space, there's a lot of negative impressions made about
Yeah.
safe use centers, as if they encourage people to use. And
Insane.
and I constantly try to tell my audience, I'm like, very few people say, hey, you know, I don't feel any need to do a drug, but I want to go. So I want to go there, where it doesn't. Anyways, it's an incredible misunderstanding. I think until someone has a brother or a sister or a child who is regularly using, and you know what they may need to do to get their next fix, and the risk that they could be in, you don't really appreciate having an understanding environment of people that could facilitate such a location. So,
Yeah. And so it's exactly it, Mark. Because we're just educating people that, you know, overdose prevention centers actually help people get into treatment, you know,
they
because
do.
we're built like we keep on coming back to the opposite of addiction is connection. And at these places, when a person walks in there, that's a person who is actually doing some harm reduction. They're doing something they're beginning to, that they care about living or dying. I know when I was out there and I didn't care whether I lived or died or not, that's a scary place to be. But anybody who goes to an overdose prevention center to use and to get some support and to wants to use in safety cares about living. And then we want to keep the person alive and then offer them supports, like, and listen for that change talk. Like, it's staffed by people, there are people who are trained in motivational interviewing. And ideally in Massachusetts, we'll have people, recovery coaches working there who can support a person's self-efficacy, who can express empathy, and who can listen and share. It's like, yeah, it inspires some hope. Like, yeah, and not judge people, but make that connection and ask them questions like, how's what you're doing working for you? And listen for that change talk. Oh, I'm hearing you thinking like you can't do this anymore. What kind of support would be helpful in making things different from you, rather than coming at them from judgment. Oh, look at you. You're using again.
Have you heard that pushback before? That
yeah.
It just creates, it furders the cycle of addiction. Have you heard? And how do you respond? So those are the points that you just listed that you would reiterate to a local politician or another community member about their concerns.
Yeah, I would say it keeps people alive, and it has that connection, and it allows the relationship to be built. Because what I really want them called, Mark, is that trauma recovery centers. Because let's face it, who's walking in that door? What person's walking in that door who hasn't experienced significant trauma? Because we don't talk enough about trauma, and how it impacts, our ability to be present, how it increases fear, and how it increases, just really does a number on a person's self-esteem. So what we want to do is be able to, and what we've talked about with trauma recovery, when we can heal and connect with people, then we feel valued, we feel safe. And then we can talk about what's really going on. And hopefully, as a result of building that relationship, the person can say, wow, you're not telling me what to do. You're expressing empathy. You're believing in my capacity for change. You're highlighting my strengths. Hey, you're treating me as a person with respect and dignity. Because at that center in Providence, there was not one negative message. I walked in there. They're treating me well. I'm seeing how, because we were walking out, and because we went there before they opened, but people were coming in, and I could hear them in the background, greeting the person by name. And also at those centers, they have a connection to, they have like a meditation room. They had a clinician on staff. They had offering support to get people into detoxes if they want to go that day. And that's the other thing. As soon as someone expresses a desire for change, let's be there to help them. And if a person, if they don't have that support and they're with somebody, I know myself, I once told this person, a drug dealer, that I was tired. It didn't feel right doing this, what I'm doing. I was, dissatisfied with my life. Talking about I was expressing some change talk. And he's like, just keep going, have another one. Now, whereas if I had a recovery coach next to me when I started expressing that change talk, he could have been supporting my ability to change. What kind of support would be helpful? Like, you're an awesome person. Yeah, I believe you can do what you can set your mind to do stuff, like, let's make that connection. And that's where the healing from trauma can begin. So, and that's what we're trying to do, is get people involved, to have meetings. MOAR is willing to set up meetings with people's legislators and just to share about that. Hey, I support trauma. I support overdose prevention centers. Let's also, they get people like when I lived in Boston, I found needles at the playground. I found needles along the train tracks where I watch my kids and I are looking at the trains go by. If we have overdose prevention centers, people will be able to bring in needles. They'll be given safe syringes. They won't feel the need to be hiding stuff in the bushes to access it later, and it'll also, if people have wound care, they can get support. Like, wounds, if you don't treat them like they can grow worse. Whereas at those centers, they have care. Like, hey, here's some anti, what do you call it? Like something
antimicrobial or
anything that support the infection from spreading. Like, here's some Neosporin, okay? Put a Band-Aid on the cut.
Well, it's so
simple stuff like that can prevent somebody's having a wound that festers. And so
I'm glad I had it. I didn't even have it on the list, and I'm glad this came up because, again, there's this terrible misconception that these safe use centers or distribution of clean needles somehow encourages people to participate in drug use. And I would say, I would challenge anyone to find someone who is not in active addiction, who, just one day said, I feel like going to a safe use center and begin using drugs. Because if you've seen someone on the street, homeless, as a user, no one in their right mind who's clean says, I want to be like that someday. Yeah. So the safe use center, it already comes in at a point where someone's gone through significant trauma. So it's unfortunate to even need to have a conversation that this is such a widespread problem in our community. But we're not in that world right now. We're in a world where there are many thousands, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, maybe in a state of 8 million people who are actively in addiction. Sadly, I don't even that number. It's a huge number.
Fearful, and can you believe, Mark? I know there was an article done in a newspaper many years ago, and they were chronicling how pervasive addiction was, and around heroin, and it was involved in this city that was on the water, and there would be a bathroom in a bar, those ceiling tiles, and on the other side of it they would have needles, and that people could shoot up and then put the needle in the ceiling tile, and people sharing dirty needles. I mean, nothing can spread HIV. I mean, that's a surefire way to spread hepatitis, HIV. And so I'm glad that you mentioned, hey, this is not going to, somebody's just not going to say, hey, I decided I'm going to go here for the first time and use. And we also have safe consumption sites in Massachusetts for drugs. And then, you know what they're called?
No.
Bars.
Well,
a bar, or a nightclub, a lounge, a restaurant where they serve alcohol is a safe consumption site, because bartenders, servers, they train not to overserve. They train when a person it looks like they're being overserved to stop serving them alcohol. And if a person were to pass out, or they could call 911 to have to get support from them, or they'll prevent them. Maybe, hey, let's take your keys away. We're not going to let you drive. You know what I'm saying?
Is that implicit, or is there actually any, formal or semi-formal, educating for bartenders and other personnel to know the signs and what to do when they see someone who's consumed too much?
Back in the late 90s, I was that was the thing I was going to do, because I was I wanted to be a bartender. So I took Boston some course, and we, as part of to get my certificate, we had to be educated about overserving, and there were laws around that, and that establishments can be held liable if they overserve somebody. So we do this harm reduction for alcohol. So why are we going to discriminate on what drugs that we're going to use harm reduction with? And actually, if you take a look back about 100 years ago, we had prohibition, right? And we outlawed alcohol. No alcohol. You can't use alcohol. So what did they have? They had all these safe consumption sites. They had these speakeasies, and so we stopped. And then we repealed prohibition because of all the harmful impacts that people were having, drinking alcohol that made them go blind, and so let's just take a step back and realize we need to stop discriminating against people in drugs. And if people aren't alive, then they can't recover. We want to, we believe recovery is possible, and that recovery is real. People can recover one moment at a time with the right support. So let's all do things differently, because Massachusetts lost over 2,000 people last year. In the last 10 years, we've lost over 20,000 people to overdose. Where's the outrage, everybody? Lynn from Team Sharing always says, where is the outrage? If we had this many people dying because of another way, like let's say, what was the response to COVID? We had this huge global response to COVID. Like, how come we're not having the same response to, you know, overdose?
Or
People,
other, I mean, look, any loss of people is sad. Any loss of young people is sad.
yeah,
But I don't see the hard decisions being made to put things in the context, and this may upset people, so I have to be careful with this. But the concerns of measles, for example,
yeah,
are there diseases which impact children? Absolutely. There are probably more children that die every day from accidental exposure in daycares who aren't even addicts than measles viruses have killed in the last year. So it's not to say that one should get all the attention, but it is so out of whack how little attention one can get. I mean, I always feel deep down to be, a little bit more political in this one, but it doesn't. I see the negligence of it and the ignorance all over the place.
alcohol is killing people. That's still legal.
Yeah.
And how many people have to die a year from alcohol? And people, it has people inadvertently,
DUIs.
people drive drunk.
Yeah.
There's all this iatrogenic harm, like unintended. And it's just really, it's sad, So that's what we're trying to mobilize people. That's what MOAR does. So honestly, I shared my number. I'll share it again, 508-971-5421. And also we have a website, MOAR recovery, MOAR -recovery.org, and you get involved there. And I'll be happy to sign people up for to be a member of MOAR. It's free. We can send you action alerts when there's an advocacy alert. We can send you a newsletter. And I'd love to have you on the Metro West Action Recovery team. When we go out there and we share our stories, whether at overdose awareness days, high schools, or testifying at the State House in Boston. So wherever we can carry that message about prevention, treatment, harm reduction, recovery, we want people to be involved. And
anytime you need me to show up, if I have a unique viewpoint that I can offer to help you, please. And please, people, could just call Scotty directly. I'm so bad with my communications. I get so many.
I return all phone calls. You can always call me up and just say recovery is real and hang up, or send me a text. I set my phone to do not disturb at night. So, because I need my beauty rest. Let's face it. I need a lot. Anyways.
Oh, that is in the Bible. God wants people to rest. You've earned your rest. You've earned your rest. Yeah. Please.
So I shut my phone off between I think 9 at night and 7 in the morning. So it goes to do not disturb. You can send me a text, so don't feel like you'd be bothering me. And and if you don't like what I have to say, I'll be happy to listen to your viewpoint. Like I don't know everything. I'm still a work in progress, and I strive to have an open mind and just trying to make use of the pain that I've had to transform into purpose, to do the best I can to support other people to be the best that they can.
Well, thank you. I speak so much about the scale of the epidemic and so many other dimensions to it, but I really wanted to share with my audience a friend of mine who can talk about the actual act of recovery and supporting people. And I think you've been able to fill some color in on that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Scotty. Really appreciate it,
Thank you, Mark, for what you do, man. I'm so grateful and happy that we're connected, and I'm excited for our future together. So
yes, me too.
All right. Recovery is real, everybody.
Take care.
You too.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch soon.